Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in on this Thursday. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do that. Leave a like, leave a comment, want to hear what you have to say of this topic. And the topic is Aaron Rodgers. The New York Jets announced on Thursday morning that they are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. They've informed him of that. And I'm checking my email, and I get an email from it is from bookies.com, odds makers. And they've updated their hypothetical odds to where Aaron Rodgers will take his snaps in 2025. And the number one team on the list, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The number two team on the list, the San Francisco 49ers, followed by the Browns, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Titans, the Raiders. I think the Raiders would be a little higher up, but no, the Giants, the Jets, and then the field. And so I, for the life of me, I can't understand exactly why the 49ers would be on that list. Um, I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to be a backup to Brock Purdy. And clearly, these odds makers aren't thinking that either. Clearly, they would say that Aaron Rodgers would supplant Brock Purdy as the 49ers starter. This comes at a time where I thought it was interesting over the weekend at the Super Bowl. Jed York was quoted by the Associated Press as talking about Brock Purdy and just kind of the 49ers long-term plan and short-term plan, I guess, for Brock Purdy. And what he says was that Jed York said, the 49ers CEO, that he had run into Purdy's agent, Kyle Strongen, quite recently. And what Jed said was, I know we want Brock to be here for a long time, and we'll do everything we can to make that work. He also said, Brock is just a tremendous human being. I'm looking forward to a long-term partnership. So it'll happen. I'm, I don't have a say in the matter, but I'm reasonably certain that the 49ers and Brock Purdy will come to an agreement on a contract that keeps him around for a long time. And Kyle Shanahan said after the season was over, both he and John Lynch expressed a desire to sign Brock Purdy to a long-term extension. What Kyle Shanahan said was that as long as he's the coach of the 49ers, he hopes that Brock Purdy is his quarterback. And I don't doubt that at all. And I think that it's easy for bookmakers or people far, far removed from the 49ers to just say, whatever, move on from him. Don't pay him top dollar. And I don't know what that contract is going to look like. Dak Prescott is the highest paid quarterback in the league at 60 million a year. I think that Brock Purdy, a year later in signing a contract, it'll be somewhere, I would think, in that range. What it looks like, I don't know. But I can tell you one thing that, there are two types of teams in the NFL: teams that have high priced quarterbacks that they pay a lot of money to. And of course, it has some impact on the rest of the roster. And there are teams that wish they had a high priced quarterback that they could pay a lot of money to and uh, then have to make sacrifices elsewhere on the roster. Winning teams, good teams have good quarterbacks. It's as simple as that. Bad teams have bad quarterbacks. I mean, that's kind of just cutting it down to the bare essence. But, let's just take Aaron Rodgers and Brock Purdy. Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old. Brock Purdy is 25 years old. Brock Purdy last year, after having a 113 passer rating, and say what you will about passer rating, but it includes the elements other than running, and that's where Brock Purdy, when you add in the QBR, Brock Purdy was very good last year because of the running element that he offered last season that he hadn't in previous years. But let's just go passer rating, which is, yards per attempt, it's touchdowns, it's interceptions, it's the essence of statistical play for a quarterback. Last year, Brock Purdy was down from 113 to 96.1. That was considered an off season or a bad season. But if that's the floor, That's still pretty darn good. Aaron Rodgers in 2022, his previous full healthy season, he was 91.9 or 91.1. So that's still 5 points lower than Brock Purdy last year. And then last year with the Jets, after missing the 2023 season with the torn Achilles, last year with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, 90.5. So if you just take those numbers, Brock Purdy statistically has been better even in his lower season than Aaron Rodgers has been anytime recently. So a lot of reasons why I wouldn't expect a 49ers Aaron Rodgers union to happen. And that's one of them, the age, what Jed York has said, what John Lynch has said, what Kyle Shanahan has said about Brock Purdy and the future of the 49ers. And, I think the closer you are to the situation, you realize how much Brock Purdy is respected and revered in the organization and in the locker room. I mean, players, Fred Warner, I mean, you just name the players, offense and defense. They speak so glowingly about Brock Purdy and just, the processing skills, his accuracy, his leadership, everything that he brings to the table. Does he have the arm that he can, throw the football through a brick wall from 60 yards away? No, but he has all the other elements that the 49ers are looking for. Okay, so there's Aaron Rodgers. That's something that's been a topic a lot um, in the last few days about that. The other part of it is we all know Kyle Shanahan is very stubborn. We know Aaron Rodgers is very stubborn. And so I just don't know that that would be a good fit as far as at this stage in Aaron Rodgers' career of learning the Shanahan system. And then I don't think that Shanahan would budge on, incorporating or bringing in the Aaron Rodgers offense, all the stuff that he's comfortable with. And we know how it was kind of, um, you know, it didn't exactly mix all that well with Matt LaFleur as the coach of the Packers, and Matt LaFleur runs, in essence, Kyle Shanahan's offense. So anyway, I think there's a lot of reasons why that wouldn't happen and couldn't happen. The other thing is Myles Garrett, or the other topic of the day, Myles Garrett. And I mean, the more I think about it, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense for the 49ers from the standpoint of the draft pick compensation is one thing, and there are reasons why it does not behoove the 49ers to give up draft pick compensation. I do think that the roster was set back immensely by the Trey Lance trade and giving up those first round draft picks. Yes, they got Brock Purdy the next draft, and that ended up being kind of a organization saver, getting Brock Purdy. But the 49ers missed some opportunities to add some really high level talent through that trade to move up to number 3 in the 2021 draft to select Trey Lance. What it's also done is it's kind of stripped the 49ers of some opportunities to add good players, defensive linemen, for instance, maybe an offensive lineman at controlled costs. And the 49ers have so many high priced players as it is. When you just think about, I mean, just ticking it through, I mean, Brock Purdy will become one of them, but there's Christian McCaffrey, there's George Kittle, there's Trent Williams, there's Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel was one, and he'll probably be gone after he requests a trade. I think that really opens the door for the 49ers to trade him and kind of be absolved of any wrongdoing in the matter. In other words, Deebo Samuel has made it known that he doesn't want to be with the 49ers. So who are the 49ers to keep him at this point? I think that they were very much inclined toward keeping him, but it was close. And I think that this probably is the best thing for the 49ers to have a player like Deebo Samuel that they can move on from and not upset anybody. They would be basically granting his wish, which could be seen as a good thing. So you got him, Nick Bosa, high price player, Fred Warner, high price player. Diamador Lenore enters that realm after he signed his extension last offseason. So I just don't know that the 49ers could or should add a player that I would assume Myles Garrett will want a new contract. He said all the right things in his statement about why he wants out of Cleveland. He wants to win a championship, but I would assume he would also want a new contract with that. And if Myles Garrett signs a new contract at this stage in his career with what he's done, I would think that he would become the highest paid defensive player in the league. So can the 49ers really take that on? I think there's one thing that watching the Eagles, heck, watching the Rams, teams can add young defensive linemen, and the hit rate is very high on young defensive linemen as long as they stay healthy, as far as being able to step in and make an immediate contribution. And so, and in my latest mock draft, I had the 49ers taking Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, at number 11. They could also obviously take an offensive lineman at number 11. They could take a defensive lineman at number 11. Whatever they decide to do there, they have the ability to bring in some really good talent along the defensive line because they do have 7 picks in the first 4 rounds of the draft. If they add 2 defensive linemen, wherever it is within those 138 picks, those guys should be upgrades. Those guys should bring in those guys should be fit in as part of the rotation, which would bump 2 guys off, which immediately makes that defensive line better. And that's probably the area where the 49ers suffered the most through that trade of Trey Lance, is that they weren't able to stack defensive linemen upon defensive linemen and just keep that rotation. The reason I really like the idea of drafting defensive linemen early in drafts is because the hit rate is so high. You don't need a defensive lineman coming in as a rookie to be one of your top 4 defensive linemen in order to make an impact. As long as he is in the top 8, there's a rotation and you can just come at a team in waves. The Philadelphia Eagles did that Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs. They overwhelmed the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. They never blitzed in that game. Vic Fangio, for all his genius, the best part of what he did on Sunday in Super Bowl was that he stayed out of the way. It was 4-man rush after 4-man rush after 4-man rush. They lined up and they just kicked the butts of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he was able to do that by having 9 defensive linemen active for that game. And so that's where a quick fix can come for the 49ers defense. I think it's much more difficult for a quick fix to come on the offensive line because that takes a while to build an offensive line, to get good production out of an offensive lineman, unless you got an offensive lineman that's an outlier. There might be 1 or 2 or 3 of those guys a year who step in and play at a very high level, whereas defensive linemen, the numbers are greater than that. So that is my thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, on Myles Garrett, and where the 49ers are right now at this point in the offseason. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have some comments, share them below. And that is it for now.